to all of you. Myself, Dr. K.T. Patil. Today, we will discuss about the weathering. So, weathering is the disintegration or breakdown of rock material due to the various weathering agents. So, on the basis of processes of weathering may be of mechanical or physical, then chemical and biological. In mechanical weathering, there is a no change in the chemical composition, but only just disintegration takes place. That is breakdown of the rock masses in the smaller and smaller species, and that takes place due to the physical action. You may see here. This is the big. You can consider it is a big rock body. It has been broken into the number of pieces. Then after it has been disintegrated, and in this way that rock has been become or converted into fine and fine grain. So this takes place due to the physical processes and which may called as the mechanical weathering. So another type of weathering is the chemical weathering, in which breakdown as a result of chemical reaction takes place, and it may term as the decomposition, and it accelerates whenever there is a availability of the moisture or presence of water. Then mechanical weathering, or which may called as the physical breakup, this is responsible for the release of the pressure, then water in which freeze thaw cycle, crystallization of the salt in cracks, then after thermal expansion and contraction. All this increases the total surface area exposed to the weathering processes. So in mechanical weathering, exfoliation is the major type, in which a rock breaks apart in a layers that are parallel to the earth's surface. As a rock is uncovered, it expands due to the lower confining pressure resulting in exfoliation. We can see here the rock is being separated in the form of thin sheets. What happens due to the release of the overburden, these rocks which were under confined pressure, and due to the removal of the overburden, that pressure will be removed, and that's why there may little bit expansion takes place, and this expansion is responsible for the formation of the uh, weak planes, or along which these rock may separable in the form of thin sheets, and it is called as the exfoliation, and this is effect of the removal of the overburden. Okay, you can see here in this figure that how this exfoliation takes place, that is mechanical weathering. See here in this figure there is a lot of overburden, and then after this has been removed, and that's why due to the release of the pressure, expansion and sheeting has been taken place, and those sheets are separated later on. Then after, this is another example of the sheet joints exfoliation. We know that sheet joints are the horizontal joints, which are also called the topographic joints, which are parallel to the topography or earth surface. And this sheet jointing is responsible for the accelerate this exfoliation. Then after, this is another example of the exfoliation. This is also. Then another type of mechanical weathering is the frost wedging, in which rock breakdown caused by expansion of ice in cracks and joints. We can see here these cracks are filled with the water, and after filling this water, then after there may be a decrease in the temperature, and that decrease in the temperature is responsible for the freezing, and after the freezing, what happens, there will be expansion will take place, and that is responsible for the creating the pressure along the sides, and due to that pressure there will be widening of this gap, widening of these fractures, and in this way, this freeze thaw action is responsible for the separation of that rock blocks in the smaller and smaller blocks. Then after, we can see here, this is the effect of the freeze thaw or forced action. That is, shattered rocks are common in the cold and alpine environments where repeated freeze thaw cycle gradually pry rocks apart. Then after, this is also the example of the thermal expansion due to the extreme range of temperature can shatter rocks in desert environments. Repeated swelling and sinking of minerals with different expansion rate will also shatter rocks. What happens? Uh, in daytime or when there is a high temperature, there may expansion, though it is not visible to naked eyes, but it takes place in the rock bodies. And when there is a decrease in temperature or at night time, there will be sinkage, okay, or sinking of that takes those rocks may take place, and this periodic action is responsible for the loosening of the grains, and ultimately there will be breakdown will take place. Then chemical weathering, that is transformation or a decomposition of the one mineral into the another. Mineral breakdowns, okay, this is the example: primary mineral, then secondary minerals. These minerals are mostly converted into the clay minerals. Then after, water is the main operator. This action takes place, that is dissolution, in which many ionic and organic compounds dissolve into the water. Then acid reactions takes place. Then after, this is the example of the dissolution. For example, water plus carbon dioxide plus calcite dissolves into the calcium ion and bicarbonate ions. Then biological activities in the soil generates substantial CO2, which is also responsible for the dissolution. Then carbonates is the dominant ion in surface runoff. Then chemical weathering are again divided into oxidation, that is oxygen dissolved into the water promotes oxidation of sulfides, ferrous oxides, native metals, and then organic activity may due to the plant material makes H plus ions available. Then after, another type of chemical weathering is the hydration, in which attachment of the water molecules to crystalline structure of a rock causing expansion and weakness. Then in hydrolysis, combination of the hydrogen and oxygen in water with rock from new substances. Then after, solution is the another important chemical weathering, in which the process by which a rock is dissolved into the water, and is strongly influenced by pH and temperature. When water becomes saturated, chemicals may precipitate out, forming evaporite deposits. Calcium carbonate, then sodium chloride and calcium sulfate are particularly vulnerable to solution weathering. Then after, this is the best example of the chemical weathering, that is karst landforms in areas underlain with the limestone. So in carbonaceous area where composition of the rock is calcium carbonate, they may get dissolved into the water, and that's why due to the dissolution or solution of that rocks into the water, there is a formation of the huge gaps or cavities, and then after, these cavities may reach up to the surface, and that's why there may be the sudden collapsing of that area, and that type of structure is called as the sinkholes. So this is the effect of the chemical weathering. Then after, another major type of the weathering is the biological weathering. So can be both chemical and mechanical in nature. So we know that big trees are always in search of water, and they move down and down. Their roots split rocks apart, because what happens, in search of water, the roots move down and down. They follow the weak planes or gaps, and at the same time there is a growth of that roots. That's why there is an increase in the diameter of the roots, and this is responsible for the creation of the pressure along the sides, and ultimately this is responsible for the widening of the gaps or cracks. And in this way, there is a breakdown of those rocks takes place. So, and in addition to this, roots produce acids that dissolve into the rock. That tree thaws, and burrowing of the animals. So in this way, plants and animals are also responsible for the weathering, which may term as the biological weathering. So this is all about the weathering.